right, this is your video for activity 17 and 18 review. So prior to the tilt the scales embedded assessment. So we're just going to pick a few of the problems to take a look at, kind of highlight each important topic. Since there are a lot of graphs, I am using graphs here, but the way it's spaced, I have to kind of go out of order. So bear with me there. So the first one we're going to look at is actually number 2, because one of the things that you have to be able to do is decide if something is a solution to a system. Whether it's equations like this one or inequalities, you have to know if they give you an ordered pair, if that ordered pair is a solution or not. So here were the two equations that you were given on number 2, and these were your 4 choices. And it wanted to know which one is a solution. Remember that for a system, it has to work in both of the equations or inequalities in order for it to be a solution. So all I'm really doing here is plugging in and checking. You do not have to actually solve the system unless you want to. You should get one of the answers that's here, but you can just plug it in to check. So if I take A and I plug the -3 in for the X and the 1 in for the Y, that statement would read 1 equals 2/3 times -3 plus 3. Well, multiplication comes first, and when I take 2/3 times -3, I get -2. -2 plus 3 is 1, so it works in the first equation. So then I look at the second equation, so y, put 1 in there, equals -3 times x, which is also -3, plus 14. -3 times -3 is +9, and plus 14 gives me 23. So 1 certainly does not equal 23, so that means I know A cannot be my answer. So then I move on to B to check it. So plug in -1 for Y here, plug in 5 for my X. So 2/3 times 5 would give me 10/3, which is 3 1/3. Plus 3 is 6 1/3, which is definitely not -1. So I don't even need to try the second one here because it fails in the first. So I can move on to choice C to see if that works. So plug in 5 for Y, plug in 3 for X. So 2/3 times 3 is 2. 2 plus 3 is indeed 5, so this one works in the first equation. So then I try the second equation. 5 equals -3 times, instead of x, I have 3 plus 14. -3 times 3 is -9. -9 plus 14 is 5. So we have found our answer. The answer is C, because it works in both. Make sure that you have work. When you are solving a problem, you have to have the work that supports it. Just because the problem is multiple choice doesn't mean that you didn't have to write something out in order to get that answer. So you know how I do not give credit when you just write answers. All right, next one I want to look at is number 3. So number 3, they gave you a graph and they wanted to know which system the graph with this solution would come from. So this is just a matter of looking at the lines and identifying the equation that goes with it. So if I start with this top line here, its y-intercept is +3. So I look, and all of my choices have a choice with that y-intercept, so that doesn't really help me. But then I look at the slope. The slope, to get to the next exact point, I have gone up 1 and right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So up 1, right 5 means the slope is 1/5 with a y-intercept of +3. So that eliminates A because the 1/5 isn't with the +3. So B is still in the running. C doesn't have a 1/5. D doesn't have a 1/5. So even at just looking at the first line, I've already decided that the answer has to be B. None of the other answers make sense. All right, next one is number 6. I'm going to look at a decent number of word problems here. So number 6, Colleen is in charge of ordering office supplies for her company. Last month she ordered ink cartridges and toner cartridges for office printers. The cost of the toner is $19.50 more than the cost of an ink cartridge. Colleen ordered 11 ink cartridges and 4 toner cartridges, and the total was $60.50. Write and solve a system of equations to find the cost of each cartridge. Remember, when you have a word problem and it tells you what to find, you should immediately define your variables. So the first thing that I should do here is say, let T equal the cost of the toner, because otherwise I might think it means the number of toners, which they already told me that. And then I'm going to let I stand for the cost of the ink. So once I've done that, I need to write my equations. So the first sentence, the cost of toner is $19.50 more than the cost of ink. So cost of toner, which is T, is, which means equals, $19.50 more than ink. So that means ink plus $19.50. You don't have to write the 0 here. You can, but you don't have to. Then 11 ink cartridges and 4 toner cartridges cost $460.50. So that means 11 ink, so 11I plus 4T, 4 toners. The cost was $460.50. All right, so I've written my system. Now I just need to solve it. So you can do this with either substitution or elimination because the directions do not specify which one to use. I'm going to use substitution because T is already by itself, so it's set up very nicely for substitution. So step 1 is already done for me. I've got T alone. So now I need to take T out of the other equation and replace it with the I plus 19.5. So I'm going to recopy this equation, except where T was, I'm going to leave a parenthesis. Sorry, that's an equal sign. It doesn't look much like one. And in its place, I'm going to put I plus 1950 or 19.5. So now I need to distribute. So I've got 11I plus, sorry, it's hard to write small with this special pen here, 4I, and then 4 times the 1950 gives me 78. And so then that equals 460.5 or 460.50. So then combine the like terms, that gives me 15I here. Subtract the 78 because its like term is on the other side. So I get 15I is equal to 382.5. So then divide by 15 and I find that I is 25.5, which means $25.50. Now on your answers, I actually wrote it out, which is how you should. You need to actually write out ink costs $25.50. I'm kind of out of room here for writing that. Then I need to find T. So T I know is I plus 19.5, so T is going to equal 25.50 plus 19.5. And so then I find that T is $45. So toner costs $45. All right, next one we're going to look at is number 10. Also a word problem. So scroll down here. Jeremiah scored 28 points in yesterday's basketball game. He made a total of 17 baskets. Some of the baskets were field goals worth 2 points. The rest were free throws worth 1 point. Write and solve a system to find the number of field goals and the number of free throws that Jeremiah made. So again, the first thing that I should be doing here is defining my variables. So I'm going to let F stand for the number of free throws because it asks me to find the number of free throws and field goals. I'm going to let G stand for the number of field goals or 2-point shots. So then I look back at my problem so that I can write my equations. Jeremiah scored 28 points. So each free throw is worth 1. So every free throw he makes, it's just worth 1. But field goals are worth 2. So I have to take 2 times the number of field goals. And that will equal his number of points, which is 28. Then it says he made a total of 17 baskets. So that means field goal or free throws plus field goals equals 17. So I wrote the system. Now I need to solve it. Again, it's your choice which method to use. I'm going to use elimination for 2 reasons, really. 1, because I already showed you a substitution example, but 2, because these are lined up nicely in columns, and that's what we want when we are trying to use elimination. So step 1 is done for us. It's lined up in the columns. Step 2, I need to get the coefficients to be opposites on either my F's or my G's. Now, the F's right now have the same coefficient, so to make them opposites, all I really need to do is multiply by -1. So the top one is going to stay the same, so F plus 2G equals 28. The bottom equation, when I multiply by -1, is going to become -F minus G equals, sorry, bad equal sign, -17. Once I have opposites, step 3 then is to actually add in columns. So F plus -F is 0. 2G plus -G is G. 28 plus -17 is 11. So look, lucky me, G is already solved for. I know that G is 11, so that means I know Jeremiah made 11 field goals. To find the number of free throws, I need to plug it back into one of the originals. Doesn't matter. I would probably use this one because it's a shorter equation. So F plus 11 has to equal 17. So subtract 11. And now I know that F is 6. So 6 free throws. So I did have room to write my labels on this one. All right, moving on. Next one I want to look at is 11C, which gave you a system. I'm going to write it here out to the side. The system that they gave you was x minus 4y equals 1 and 2x minus 9 equals 8y. So we were supposed to solve this by graphing, hence why I'm using the coordinate plane here. So first thing I want to do if I want to graph is get y by itself in both my equations. So in this top equation, the first step to get y alone is to subtract x on both sides. So when I do that, I'm going to get -4y equals -x plus 1. Y still isn't alone. I've got this multiplied -4 there, so I need to divide everything by -4. So those are going to cancel. Y is now alone, and I have y equals, this is a -1 in front of the x. -1 divided by -4 is positive 1/4 is the coefficient for the x, and then positive 1 divided by -4 is -1/4. All right, then I'm going to do the same thing with my other equation. Here, to get y by itself, all I need to do is divide everything by 8. So those cancel. I am going to put my y on the left this time. So y equals 2 divided by 8 is 1/4. so 1/4 x. Negative 9 divided by 8 does not reduce, so that stays negative 9/8. So when I go to graph this line has a y-intercept of negative 9/8, so that's just a little bit more than negative 1, so negative 1 1/8 would be right here. Then my slope is 1/4, so that means up 1, right 4, up 1, right 4, as well as down 1, left 4. So, drawing my line, hard to do with the special pen, sorry that they're crooked, and then graph my second line. Y-intercept here is negative 1/4, so just barely below 0. Slope of 1/4, so up 1, right 4, up 1, right 4, as well as down 1, left 4, down 1, left 4. So connect those dots. So since we were solving by graphing, we have our graph. Remember that the solution is represented by the intersection point. These lines are clearly parallel. You can tell that from the graph as well as from the fact that their slopes are the same. Which is why the answer listed on your answer sheet is no solution. All right, next graphing one, number 14. We started out, one equation was 3x plus 4y equals 8. So, need to get y by itself here. So first subtract 3x. So that gives me 4y equals negative 3x plus 8. And then I divide by 4. So I get y, sorry, I'm going to do it up here because my pen was not working well there. Y equals negative 3/4 x, and then 8 divided by 4 is 2, so plus 2. That's a 4, not a 9. The second equation was y equals negative 3/4 x plus 2. So I notice immediately these are the same equation. That doesn't mean you don't have to graph it. It says to solve by graphing, so you need to actually graph it. So y-intercept is at 2. Slope is negative 3/4, so down 3, right 4, down 3, right 4, as well as up 3, left 4, up 3, left 4. So I still graph it, but the graph is only of one line, which is why the answer that is listed is infinitely many solutions. It also asks you to classify the system on this one. When it's only one line, that means the system is dependent. As long as there is at least one solution, that means it's consistent. So dependent solutions are always consistent. So dependent and consistent. I'm not going to go all the way through number 15, but very similar to 14 here. It wanted you to write the other part of a system that's dependent and consistent. So that means that any answer that happens to be the same line as the original line they gave you would be correct. All right, now we are moving on to activity 18, and we're going to start with 4B, which is graphing a system of inequalities. So the first inequality is x minus 4y is greater than or equal to 4. So to get y alone, first I subtract x. So negative 4y greater than or equal to negative x plus 4. Then I divide by negative 4. When I divide by a negative, remember that means that I need to flip the symbol. So less than or equal to. Negative 1 divided by negative 4 is positive 1/4. 4 divided by negative 4 is negative 1. The second inequality was 4y minus x is greater than 8. So get y alone here. First I add x. So 4y greater than x plus 8. Then I divide by 4. Again, when you are dividing and it's a plain x or a negative x, the number in front is 1. So it's 1 divided by 4, which is 1/4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So 1/4 x plus 2, y-intercept at 2, up 1 right 4, up 1 right 4, down 1 left 4, down 1 left 4. This one is a plain greater than, so it's a dashed boundary line. And greater than means above. So the shading goes up here. Remember, you can check it. If I plug in 0, 0, 0 is not greater than 2. So 0, 0 should not be shaded, which it's not. The other one, negative 1 is the y-intercept, so start here. The slope is 1/4 again, so up 1 right 4, up 1 right 4, as well as down 1 left 4 on both. This one is a solid boundary line. And the symbol, since we had to flip it, less than means below. Again, you can check that by plugging in 0, 0 if you want. Now remember, systems of inequalities, the answer is the overlap. And here, the blue and the red do not overlap, which is why I wrote that the answer is no solution. And I explained that on the answer key, the book doesn't have any shading. That's because they're trying to only show you the answer. And there is no shaded region because there is no solution there. All right, next one I want to look at is number 9. And sorry, it'll take me a minute. I have to switch over to the other page. Here we go. So number 9. The graph shows the solution of a system of inequalities. Which statement is true? So remember, the solution is the overlap. So the darker shading, this area is the solution. So it says 2, negative 2 is a solution. 2, negative 2. Well, that's the intersection point, but this is a dashed line. So points on the boundary line are not solutions because that second one is dashed. So can't be A. The origin is not a solution. That's not true. The origin is in the shaded region. C, any ordered pair with a negative x coordinate is a solution. Well, if I continue the graph forever, that won't necessarily infinitely be true, so that won't work. It works for some of the x's here, but not all x's forever. So D, hopefully it's the answer. 2, negative 4, that's here, is not a solution. That is true. 2, negative 4, definitely not a solution. So D is your answer there. All right, last one I want to look at is number 11, about Connor and his used books. So he's buying used books. The paperbacks cost $2 each. The hardcovers cost $3 each. He spent no more than $90. He bought no more than 35 books. So part A asked you to write a system of inequalities, state what the variables represent. So asking us, just like we always do, to define our variables. So you could see on my answer sheet that I let P stand for the number of paperbacks, and I let H stand for the number of hardcovers. When I write my system, it says that Connor spent no more than $90. And remember, each paperback is $2. Each hardcover is $3. So 2 times the paperbacks plus 3 times the hardcovers would represent the total cost. We said that's no more than $90. My other inequality, it says that he bought no more than 35 books. So number of paperbacks plus number of hardcovers has to be less than or equal to 35. So you could see from my graph that I put paperbacks on what would be the x-axis and hardcovers on the y. It doesn't matter if you do it the other way as long as you label. We only need the first quadrant here because of the real life situation. Number of books cannot be negative. So in order to graph this, because h is like my y variable, I am going to get it alone. So I subtract p from both sides here, and I've got negative p plus 35. On my other inequality, to get h alone, first I need to subtract 2p, which gives me 3h less than or equal to negative 2p plus 90. And then when I divide everything by 3, I have h is less than or equal to negative 2/3 p plus 30. So first one, y-intercept is at 30. It would be good to decide upon a scale. You could see I only labeled every other one, but I counted by tens on mine, so I'll do that on here as well. All right, so y-intercept at 30 would be here. And then I have a slope of negative 2/3, so down 2, right, 3. Now, I can't go down into the negatives because it doesn't make sense in the real life situation. So I could go down 1, right 1.5 to get this intercept. Here I could also go up 1, left 1.5 to fill in the middle point. These are solid boundary lines. So there's my boundary. And it's a less than, so the shading should be below. Again, I'm not going into negatives. Other one, y-intercept is 35, so that would be up here. And the slope is negative 1, so down 1 unit, right 1 unit. Down 1 unit, right 1 unit. All the way across. Ah, shoot, I lost my place there. So 30, 35, so down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, all the way across, and it crosses the axis about right here. It's really hard for me to draw straight lines with this pen, so I apologize. And then below. So we can see that the shaded area, again, you can see it better if you look at my review answer key, but it's this area right in here is our shaded region. Again, we shouldn't go outside of that because of the real life situation. And then of course on your graph you would label your axes, which if you look at my key you can see that I did that as well. So we are done with that part. We have graphed, so this was 11B was the graph. Then 11C asked us to name 2 ordered pairs that were solutions, and it asked us to interpret them in the context of the problem. So if you look at my answer sheet, you can see the 2 ordered pairs that I picked there. Of course, those are not the only solutions. You can pick any ordered pair that falls in the shaded region. When you interpret it, make sure that you put it in the right order. So the way that I labeled my axis, P was like X. So the first number on my ordered pair, so one of the ones that I picked was 2010. The first number is the number of paperback books. The second number is the number of hardcover books. So again, if you look at my answer key, you can see those. Note that I also included how much they would cost because that shows, that proves that it's a solution. because you know that 20 plus 10 is less than 35, but then you also know that the total cost is less than or equal to 90. The final question, 11D, asked if he spent exactly $90 and bought exactly 35 books, what would the solution be? So if it was exactly, these would change from less than or equal to signs to just equal signs. So if that's the case, if I'm solving the system of equations, not inequalities, that means that the answer is the intersection point. So the answer would be the point 15, 20. Again, it's kind of hard to see on my graph here, but 15, 20 is where they intersect. You can see it better on the graph I gave you on the answer handout. So the solution would just be the intersection point, which would mean if he spent exactly that much and bought exactly that many, that it would be 15 paperbacks and 20 hardcover. All right, just a reminder again that I've just picked a few of the review problems here. Make sure you've shown your work on all problems where it's needed if you want credit. Also remember that there are other videos if you feel like you need to look more at, for instance, the elimination method. I describe all the steps in detail in the Activity 17 review video. In 16.2 video, I went over graphing in great detail. So just make sure you check out what you need and that you prepare for your embedded assessment.